Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Meter Cute interviews here on Meter and Mayhem. Today we'll be talking to Cheryl J. Fish, whose debut novel, Off the Yoga Mat, is available now from Livingston Press. It's the coming of middle-age story of three characters, and you'll get to hear a little bit of the novel when she reads from it here in a hot second. She's also the author of the poetry collections The Sauna is Full of Maids and Crater and Tower. Cheryl's also been a Fulbright professor in Finland, as well as the co-editor with Farah Griffin of A Stranger in the Village, 2 Centuries of African American Travel Literature. Her poems have recently appeared in Hanging Loose, Maintenant, Terrain, and Mameg Review, New American Writing, Read, Postcard Poems, Santa Monica Review, About Place Journal, Isle, and Poetics for the More Than Human World. Her short fiction has appeared recently in Iron Horse Literary Review and New Voices, Contemporary Writers Confront the Holocaust. Cheryl is a creative writing editor at the journal Eocene and professor of English at Borough of Manhattan Community College, CUNY. So sit back, relax, and get ready to fall in love.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cheryl J. Fish, and I'd like to thank Jen for interviewing me on her podcast. I'm going to read first from my debut novel, Off the Yoga Mat, which is the story of 3 characters coming of middle age. It's set in the year 1999 with Y2K, year 2000 anxiety approaching. And each of the 3 characters feels that they screwed up in their younger days, and now that they're approaching middle age, they want to start over and reinvent themselves. The section I'm going to read is about Nora, who's living in New York City and writing as a marketing professional, but her boyfriend, Nate, is still a graduate student. He's struggling, and she wants to have a baby because she's about to turn 40, as are all the main characters. And she has the opportunity to go to work for Nokia in Finland in the year 1999, when Nokia was a cell phone giant. And so this section I'm reading from is when Nora first arrives in Finland. And I'll just read a little bit from chapter 6, Suomi, which is the Finnish word for Finland. Before Nora knew it, her red-eye flight touched down at Vantaa Airport outside Helsinki. On a bleak late February evening, Nora was whisked to a diner at a small ravintola on Mannerheimintie, a busy sloping street in the center of town, by 2 young men from Nokia who came to fetch her. They ordered wine by the millimeter and pizza topped with ham and pineapple, then sat in silence. The long flight had disoriented her, but after dinner, the guys insisted on playing tour guide. They waited for streetcar 3B, which circled the city with determinacy. It was dubbed the Drunks Tram Line because anyone could find their way home on that route. Nora boarded and rode through the misty, dark winter in a haze. Long, unpronounceable street names with strings of A's and N's. Finnish and Swedish, the official languages of Finland. Finnish streets end in Katu and Swedish in Gatan. Nora attempted to pronounce Alexandrine Katu and Kaisaniemen Katu, and as you can hear, I can't pronounce it very well. After her guides enunciated them several times, but her tongue could not form such sounds. Luckily, almost everyone spoke English in Suomi. I've been sheltered, she told her hosts after her tram ride. Her only previous trips abroad had been to Canada and Club Med in the Bahamas. They checked her into a chain hotel, Sokos, where she slept covered by a pod-like sheet with a blanket inside. She woke early and went downstairs to devour several servings of a buffet of herring, porridge, meats, cheeses, and rye crackers. Nora's host walked her to the harbor on the Gulf of Finland where cruise ships docked and islands dotted the coast. They guided her to an austere white cathedral rising from Senate Square near government buildings and the university. In the short period of early February daylight, Nora made out yellow and pink pastel-colored buildings on slanted cobblestone streets. By the train station, people glided on an ice rink. Nora envisioned Jeremy's arm across her back, the two of them skating like Kitty and Levin in the opening pages of Anna Karenina. She imagined Nate, her ex, sitting on the ice, an angry child who took a spill. Caught in the ether between North America and Northern Europe, Nora tried to shake off her past. Exhilaration outweighed jet lag as she wrapped her scarf around her neck. What was the Fahrenheit equivalent of -10 Celsius? I'll be in another office in another day, away from the cubicle world of Midtown Manhattan. What will befall me? I'll discover Nokia's genius for technology, tap new contacts, find glorious romance. I hope I'll get pregnant. She had heard that the Finns loved children. They worked reasonable hours and made time for family. The welfare state ensured mothers received fully paid leave for a year or two. Celebrated for honesty in business and in personal affairs, the Finns were people Nora couldn't wait to experience. Later, her greeters gone, she entered an unusual church known as Church in the Rocks. The roof was a burrow with slats through which light entered, gentle and meditative. The angle of the weak winter sun created stripes along the walls, filling her with optimism. No one to be accountable to, nothing left to prove. She found herself praying for the health of her dad and for herself. I can be selfish, she thought. She used a phone card to call her parents before she checked out of the hotel. I wanted to let you know I'm safe, she said. Guess what? It's dark here at 2:30 in the afternoon. She boarded the train to Tampere, about 90 minutes northwest of Helsinki, and took a taxi to Nokia's branch. They escorted her to an office, all hers. No cubicle. She could lock the door and had a small closet, new computer, and a phone. No booming voices or competitive drivel. No Jeremy in his dark suit, sparking drama and ogling multiple women. After she nodded off in her chair, she watched as a tidy, short man approached her. Hello, I'm Win. Actually, Winchester, he said, with a firm handshake. My parents were partial to that famous cathedral in England, but I grew up in Wales. Here for an interlude like you, to give the Finns advice on marketing and to steal their secrets. Welcome. He was about 5'4", with a beard and a receding hairline. Nora preferred taller, more hirsute men. She hadn't internalized her singleness. I'm Nora Jane Lester, from Maryland, but after some years in the city, morphed into a New Yorker. It's my first time outside North America. I'm shocked by the darkness and the quiet. Later, she met her Finnish supervisors, Aino from marketing, a white blonde with glasses and a short leather skirt, Alto, a technical specialist, thin with small rectangular glasses and a long striped tie. They piled on reading material about marketing plans and Y2K precautions for the anticipated meltdown. Alto took her downtown to acquire a bus pass and open a bank account. He walked her to her apartment in the Tamala neighborhood, carrying her 2 heavy suitcases without complaint. He contacted someone on the phone to arrange her weekly sauna session in the basement of her apartment building. I'm already sweating, Nora said, attempting humor. Alto didn't smile or make eye contact. In fact, he stepped back. In New York, density overruled manners. Life so loud and fast, you became your impulses. Finland turned out to be a big country with a minuscule population. Finns spread out, creating barriers inside buffer zones, seeking nature in the countryside to soothe their gentle souls. How would she fare amid these introverted, earthy folks? So I'll stop there, but you can read more about Nora's adventures in Finland in Off the Yoga Mat. published by Livingston Press, University of West Alabama. And I'll end by just reading a couple of poems from two of my most recent poetry books. So this is from Crater and Tower, which is a book of poems that juxtaposes the incidents of 9/11/01, the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, with the volcanic eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980, which I came to see the aftermath 30 years later in 2010 as part of a group of writers who visited the Mount St. Helens volcanic national monument with scientists who study it and look at the different habitats, how they've changed over time since the eruption. So this poem that I'll read is the first poem in the book. And this book will be republished by Shanti Arts Press. It went out of print shortly after it was published by another small press. So I'm excited that it will be coming out again, and I'll be adding a few new items. Hula Hoop Mojo. 30 years after Mount St. Helens spoke with a maddening clarity, I picked up a hula hoop near the shower trailers. Left by some child who forgot to pack it, I could swirl that hoop that morning endlessly. It encircled me, a gravity polka, hips and lips and holes, east to west, high to low. I kept it spinning, it spun me. Mountains have no apparent rhythms like apparitions and lost souls. Unsuspected hoopla can't be ruled out. As a young girl, I had known the joys of batons and hoops, twisting wrist, undulating tummy, throwing them high for all to see. You have to look at me. Now with no one watching but birds and sullen peaks. My hips rock that vortex. Plastic centrifugal force, a lifeline. Saturn's rings, kamikaze locomotive near the volcanoes, geothermal underbelly. Botched terrain in quiet glow of July, surrounded by old growth forest for trees, fir trees and mosses, girth of elephant's ears, purple lupine and fanning ferns. And I'll close this little reading with prior previousness from my book of poems and photographs, The Sauna is Full of Maids, published by Shanti Arts Press in 2021, which also is a lot about Finnish culture, including the sauna and friendships. This poem is for Jane Weiss. Prior previousness. In the hotel sauna with Jane in Helsinki, we relax our previousness. Lost in sweat and shower, heated meditation far from New York City, and our jobs teaching writing to immigrant students. We must get back. We undo done graduate school, striving for hot heat relaxation, nudity, beer spigots outside, but no beer. We ride the streetcar to see the Tom of Finland exhibit, to sit by the Gulf of Finland with its pleasure boats, listening to birds. Light gathers fierce strength throughout May. Jane returns to Suomi every 2 years for the Maple Leaf and Eagle Conference. We drip, we pour water, touch the wooden bench. In our prior previousness, we were not close. Here, we glisten. Crave small, crunchy muiku fish fried in kettles, but it's not quite summer, not quite midnight sun. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was a wonderful reading. I'm really struck by the way that your work, your fiction and your poetry alike, not only brings the reader into a specific place, but also a specific time. You've got that, your work is really infused with all of that. So Would you like to tell me about a book that has caused the most mayhem in your life?
Yeah, thank you for noticing the not only is it place-based but time-bound. For some reason, I find that helps stop the chaos. The chaos, because when you're writing, especially a novel, it can be anything can be in there. And it's true also of poetry, but like a novel is just like this gigantic canvas of everything. So I'm gonna name a number of books that do have mayhem, but they also find a way to wonderfully control the mayhem or structure the mayhem. And in that way, they are instrumental to me and wonderful, inspirationally to me. So I'm going to start with a really old book. Because I'm an English professor and we like old stuff. Um, so I'm going to start with Don Quixote by Cervantes. That book, which I've read twice now, it's just so full of mayhem. It's it's about a delusional character, the main character, but his madness is so inspiring, is so funny, and then his sidekicks, Sancho Panza, is so wise in his very down to earth working class way that and Don Quixote is so extremely delusionally in a fascinating and idealistic way that the book is incredibly chaotic. It's a huge book. It has flashbacks, it has stories within stories, it has flash forwards, it has defenses because someone was trying to plagiarize Cervantes. So he put the second half of the book out where he defended the first half of the book and he made himself a character. It's just such an incredible book that that it just is mayhem, but mayhem that's so pleasing and satisfactory and universal and has lasted the ages. So that's the first book. Then a more recent case of mayhem is Elena Ferrante's Neapolitan Quartet, which I'm a huge fan of. And the TV show on HBO has managed to capture it really well, but I was part of the Ferrante madness that ensued because it's the first time that female friendship, female frenemies and friendship was so realistically portrayed in novel form and through these four books that just the chaos of the characters growing up in Naples through it takes us through a good part of the 20th century and the violence and structure of the families, the pressure, the limited gender roles, the pressure of controlling who was in charge, who would survive in those chaotic neighborhoods in Naples, and the way the two main characters want to become successful writers and get out of there, but only one of them can make it out. So that book was amazing. Those books were amazing to me. Zadie Smith's book White Teeth. It's so specific to time and place. It's such a chaotic mosaic of characters. Then she captures the accents of so many different groups of people, different races, different ethnicities, different cultures. She captures their realities, the way they speak to each other. It's funny, it's ironic, it's just brilliant. And she wrote it, as a young woman. And of course, she's had many books since then. I'm a big fan of Zadie Smith, but somehow White Teeth is just a book that blew me away. And then I can't leave out a poet. So Joy Harjo, who was that poet laureate of the United States, who's Native American. And to me, her poems embody the chaos of being colonized, the chaos of being an indigenous person in the United States and what happened to your people. But she writes with such spirit. She combines earth, she combines her Native American spiritual heritage. She combines the tragedy of American displacement of Native Americans with this wonderful reclamation of art, of music. She's also in a band. So she combines American history with everyday life, spirit with down to earth. She just surprises me all the time in her poetry, and I'm just a big fan. And no, so those are some of the people, and they, even though their work does have mayhem in it, it also finds a way to sort of deal with that mayhem and structure that mayhem and have that mayhem be so fruitful and so joyful, and sometimes as well as sad. But she finds the way to channel that mayhem into beautiful writing.
And one of the things that I love most about Joy Harjo's memoirs is the way you mentioned the way that she blends spirit with down to earth. And I just loved in her memoirs, she'll be, talking about going to school and things that were happening to her. And then she'll be talking about spirits communing with her or leading her on or saying different things to her. And I think that was the first time for me that I had seen that in a memoir, to
Do
see.
you mean an American Sunrise, or you're talking about an actual memoir? Because an American Sunrise, I would say it's poetry, but it does have her personal sojourn to go back to where her people came from. And but I haven't read her. If she has actual
Oh,
memoirs, I have not read them.
yeah, she has actual
Oh,
memoirs,
okay,
the name of which is escaping me at the moment.
okay.
Um, Maybe I will flex my editing skills and I will put it down right here. I'll try to put it in text right there so people will know the memoir I'm talking about when I edit the video, hopefully. But yeah, it's I recommend her memoirs as much as the poetry. Um, that she's great. Did you watch Reservation Dogs at all? The show?
Yes, I started it. I really liked it. I have to go back to it. Yeah, I
Have you
thought it was really great.
have
I
you
saw
gotten to the part where she has a cameo yet?
No, I've just watched the first two episodes, basically. So, yeah.
She has it's I can't remember what season it's in, but she plays like they go into a convenience store and she plays sort of the cranky convenience store worker, and she's perfect in it, right?
That's
Like
so perfect because I love her poems about the bars, about going to the bar, and about, just I teach her also in my classes, and it's not easy to teach to the students of today because she juxtaposes such interesting she has a lot of junk food and garbage wrappers. They'll show up in her poems and things like that. So it's great that they made her a convenience store worker. That's perfect.
yeah. Yeah, it was great. I think she's fabulous. Um, so you mentioned that you teach and so you're working with younger folks often. What advice do you have for a younger version of Cheryl?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's not one that you get asked on most of the podcasts and interviews. So, I guess I would want her to have more confidence. I would want her to, to not get discouraged so easily because writers and all creative people, we have to deal with a lot of rejection
Yeah.
constantly. And sometimes it flattens us, it sometimes just stops us and makes us feel like we shouldn't keep going. And so I think, the younger Cheryl, the younger Cheryl certainly wrote a lot. I'm always finding papers all over my house when I go through old file cabinets and paper, when we type things on a typewriter or when we just wrote in longhand pre-computer. I'm always finding so much. So I was writing a lot, but I think, I thought a lot of it was bad probably. And uh, I just probably doubted myself a lot. And then the other thing is when I went to get my PhD, I really had to set aside my fiction writing for a long time. So I wish I had been able to keep that up more because it was a big period of stopping that. And then the other thing, I probably wished I would have gotten my MFA when I was older. I got my MFA partly as a way to get out of a corporate job. I wanted to get out of the corporate world, and that was something to do, but I didn't do it with a very thoughtful or very organized way. And I've seen how other people have used their MFA experiences as a catapult into lots of great connections and leading to different things. And I just sort of did it as an escape from this corporate job and working in a bank. And that was so not right for me. So that's one advice I might give is to take your time with that and don't necessarily get an MFA before, you've really matured a little bit more as a writer. I mean, there weren't these long distance ones in those days. Now we have those ones where you only go 1 week a year. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, those, I think I know people that have done those, and those seem to be at a more mature time in their life. Um, so anyway, those are two things that I possibly would have advised my younger self to maybe do something a little differently.
Hmm. When did you start? When did you start submitting stuff for publication?
Ah, yeah, it's hard to remember exactly when, but probably, um, probably when I came to New York a few years after I went to college in Michigan, and when I came back, I fell in with a group of writers at St. Mark's Poetry Project. So I was very involved with the scene there, and I gave readings and I took workshops with a lot of this famous, New York school second generation poets. Um, so, I studied and was around many people such as Allen Ginsberg, John Ashbery, Bernadette Mayer, Jack Collum, Anne Waldman, Patricia, Patricia Smith, many, many others. So it was in that time period, but like when I first started submitting things, they were Mimeo books, and they were like zines, and like we put together chapbooks that we made ourselves on Mimeo machines. So one of my first publications was a Mimeo book that I did at St. Mark's Poetry Project with the poet Maureen Owen. And out of a workshop. And so that was an early form of self-publishing. And at the same time, I would submit poems to the St. Mark's Poetry Project newsletter. And I had a short story appear in this wonderful Lower East Side magazine called Between C and D that was edited by Catherine Texier and Joel Rose in the 80s. And that was on Mimeo paper. That was actually on dot matrix printer paper. That's how that magazine was printed, and it had a lot of famous people in it, including Anthony Bourdain. I recently discovered that my first like published short story was on the back of early writing that would become the basis for Kitchen Confidential. That freaked me out, and I'm writing a poem right now about Anthony Bourdain. I mean, a lot has been published and come out since his death. So a lot of people have been writing about him, but when I discovered that like blew my mind. Um, so kind of in the early 80s, I was very involved in the New York Lower East Side arts and writing scene, and that was amazing. And so much was happening in all the arts at that time, CBGB's, Keith Haring, Basquiat, uh, early Sonic Youth, all that was going on. And that was kind of my life. And then, and then I decided to get my MFA, and that introduced me to more academic kinds of publications and more mainstream kinds of writing. And, of course, there was no internet, so you had to find places to submit to in a very different way than you do now.
The big Poets Market book and
Oh yeah, and also New York had a poetry calendar. New York City had this paper poetry calendar that told you where all the readings were every month and listed places to submit. And there was one out of San Francisco called Poetry Flash. And even though I lived in New York, I would get Poetry Flash, and they had places to send your stuff. And Poets and Writers Magazine. I've been a long time subscriber to Poets and Writers Magazine. They've always had the submission section in the back for many, many, many years. And yes, the directory that you're talking about, there was that directory that I would look at. So those were those times. That's how we did it in those days.
yeah. Yeah. I remember I started submitting kind of at the tail end of those days. The A lot of things were starting to be on the internet, but there was still that feeling that online publications were somehow less than. it was sort of that time in the aughts where it was like there were still lots of hierarchies about all that. And so yeah, I would get the Poets Market out of the library and write down where I wanted to submit and all that. So do you think that Cheryl from that time period, would she have any advice if she could see you and how you are now? Would she look at it and have any advice for you now?
Maybe. Uh, I mean, I think my young writer self was certainly maybe more edgy, because I was immersed in the nightlife, in the club scene. I was partying at all the New York Lower East Side, East Village party scene. I was going to La Mama Theater. I was seeing all, Karen Finley she got before she got persecuted by the NEA. I was seeing all these radical artists. I was, in my 20s, and I was living in a very exciting place in a very exciting time. So I think my work was edgier and more based in also spontaneity, because like a big thing for me was you could just talk to strangers. You could just be sitting in a cafe and look at each other and just start up a conversation, and it's just doesn't happen today. It's just people are so distant from each other. They're all on their devices. It's one of the things that I find the hardest right now is the way people are more in tune with being on devices than on being present
Mm.
in the moment. And it was just much so, maybe the younger Cheryl would say, try to be in the moment, try to find a way to write like you're in the moment, even if it's harder to be in the moment because times have changed so much that it's hard to recreate that same experience and that same feeling. So when I am having a good day with my writing, I feel like it is a lot about being in the moment. And uh, music is a huge influence for me. Nature is a huge influence for me. Um, and it was easier to get all that stuff because I was staying out late, and I was living a very wilder life as a younger person now. I'm older and I've slowed down a lot. I still go to a lot of art stuff in the community and beyond. I go to a lot of artist residencies and writing residencies and have a lot of friends in the arts. But it's different now. It's a little harder to have that immediate like wow factor that you have when you're young.
Yeah. Are there any songs that are inspiring you right now? You mentioned that you get a lot of inspiration from music. Are there any songs that are really getting to you?
I never can just say one song. I like lots of music, and I put together a playlist for Off the Yoga Mat, my novel,
Oh,
that's on Large Hearted Boy. Do you know that blog site?
I
Large
don't,
Hearted
but
Boy.
I want that.
Look it up. I have a whole playlist that influenced that novel. The novel references a lot of music, including Bob Dylan, but also Finnish music. Reverend Billy and the Stop Shopping Choir, which is an activist group in New York City that does protests and advocates stopping consumption, and I put them in. And so I always find a way to put music into the writing. I have poems that are inspired by music from the book The Sauna is Full of Maids book. There I have the yoik, which is a Sami throat singing that connects with the spiritual world, or it's a way to connect with a longing, either with someone who might have passed, or could be with an animal that is a spirit guide. So that's a form of throat singing that I refer to quite a bit in that book of poetry. So different types of music influence me at different times. I'm currently writing fiction that's set in Iceland.
Huh.
So there's a lot of great Icelandic bands, and then also there's ancient references to the mythology of Iceland that has been motivating me, which is not only the sagas, but there are these earlier books called the Eddas, which are a lot of the stories that the Norse mythology is based on. So that's not exactly music as we know it, but there certainly is music that's based on that, and the rhythms of those the rhythms of those poems and prose. Of course, it's in translation in English, but I find sometimes the translated epics and mythologies are very inspiring to me, just like Don Quixote was, as being from Spain. So at different points, I would say different music inspires me. And I am planning to write, after I finish this current book set in Iceland, I am planning to write something based on Flushing, Queens, where I grew up. And I'm sure I'll listen to, and that's, the 70s and 80s music. So I'm sure I'll go back to listening to a lot of that music, because that'll be very inspiring for me, for my writing of that period.
Yeah, excellent. Every time you keep mentioning Sammy, I think about the Norwegian group Kaino. Do you know that band?
Um, how do you spell it?
Oh, I think it's Keino.
Okay, and what kind of music do they make?
Well, they're a pop band. They're like a super group pop band, but the rapper with it is Sammy, and so he raps in, so they have these rap breaks that will be in Sammy.
Okay, there are a lot of Sami rappers, so I do know some of the Sami rappers, and then I know like the traditional yoikers like Marie Boyne and others like that. And then there are a lot of Sami rappers. So I'm not sure which is the one. There's Slin K's, something like that. Slin Clothes or Slin K's. He was big a few years ago. So the one you're mentioning, I may not specifically know, but I know of the diversity of that music. Yeah.
I'll send you some links.
Okay.
Maybe I'll put some links. I'll get really into my editing, and I'll put some links down here too, maybe.
Well, and I can
We'll
also
see.
send you the link to Large Hearted Boy, because there is definitely a Sammy song in the list. And you could see the diversity of music that I felt was the soundtrack to Off the Yoga Mat. Yeah.
So do you since you're very connected to Finland, do you know Karja's music, and how do you feel about him if you do?
I was in Finland when Eurovision was going on.
I bet it was because he had the green bolero
Yes, and I
jacket.
even have a picture of me watching someone imitating him in Helsinki right after he didn't win.
Yeah.
Okay, I found the rapper that I was mentioning called Slincraze, Slincra. He's a Norwegian rapper who raps in Sami. So I don't know if you know him. He's one that I know about, and I've heard other Sami rappers when I've gone to art exhibitions in Inari, which is, the Sami, there's a Sami museum up in Inari. And I went to see an opening of a Sami photographer that I follow, and there was another Sami rapper that performed there. So there are a lot of them now. But yes, the guy you're talking about, I definitely was there for that. So I do.
It seemed, from what I could see online, it seemed like it was just complete madness. Like
It was
everybody was
complete
just so excited.
mayhem, complete madness. It was wonderful to be in Finland during the Eurovision. I watched it. I was able to watch it. They had some of it on these big screens, out in public. I was able to watch some of it there, but I was able to watch it on Yle, is the Finnish national TV station. I was able to get that on my computer, so I was able to watch. But yes, it was totally wonderful. But connecting to Eurovision, I happened to be in Finland when Lordi had won. Okay,
Oh.
so that's when I had my Fulbright, was when Lordi won, and I was there the year that Eurovision was in Helsinki, because it's in the country the year after. Whoever wins, it's in that country the following year. So I was in Finland in 2007 for my Fulbright, and that's when Eurovision actually took place in Helsinki, but they had won the year before. So Lordi won in 2006, and everything Lordi was crazy in Finland that year. There were all sorts of Lordi stores and restaurants and meals, and Hard Rock Hallelujah was played all over the place. And So yeah, I became a big Eurovision fan after that. Before that, like most Americans, I had never heard of it.
Yeah, I got into Eurovision when when Will Ferrell had the movie that came out on
Oh yeah,
Netflix.
I saw that movie. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so then ever since my husband and I have just been like very Eurovision obsessed, and we're even watching like national finals. Like Czechia just had their national final, and we had very specific opinions about who we thought should win and how we thought things should go down. And so yeah,
Oh
we've
yeah, that
never
movie
been.
was wonderful. Believe it or not, a lot of people haven't seen it. I was telling people about it in Finland, and quite a few of them had never seen that movie. And of course, it's set in Iceland, and being that I go to Iceland a lot, uh, and Eurovision is huge in Iceland because they often do well. Yeah, but yeah, Caria is with the green. They had like the train station, uh, iconic sculptures wearing green outfits. They just went nuts, with him. They went nuts with what they did.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, so cool. It was awesome. It was so cool to get to talk to you today, Cheryl. I really enjoyed our
Same here.
conversation. Thanks for letting me chat with you.
Same here. I appreciate it. It was fun to have those questions, which aren't typically asked. So it was interesting to think about it and to cover so many different topics. Thank you.
Wow. That was a wild ride. The thing I loved about conducting that interview with Cheryl J. Fish was how I would think an answer was going to go one way, and then 5 seconds later, we would be talking about New York in the 80s, and the St. Mark's literary scene, right? Like, it was amazing. So many places that interview went to. And Eurovision. I hope that you all are now one going and watching the Will Ferrell movie on Netflix, and then just search for Eurovision on YouTube and just enjoy. Just sit back, go down the rabbit hole, enjoy all the great new music, including Norwegian supergroup Kaino, who figured unexpectedly heavily in this interview with Cheryl J. Fish. Thanks for stopping by.